We have an active shooter.
Let's go ahead and declare this a mass casualty.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 16910 means we got shots fired at 4:15 at Route 291. Sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
Breaking news, police say at least 5 people are dead after a shooting at a Colorado Springs nightclub.
The shooting happened just before midnight at Club Q. That's an LGBTQ nightclub. Another 18 people were injured in that shooting. According to authorities, Colorado Springs police say they have a suspect in custody. That person is currently being treated at an area hospital.
The shooting at Club Q in Colorado Springs, Colorado, was so much more than just another shooting. The violent attack targeting a specific group of people was committed during a time that was designated to promote awareness, togetherness, peace, and understanding, at a place known for its acceptance. In the midst of Transgender Awareness Week, during the late night hours of November 19th, and very early morning hours of November 20th, 2022, as so many were celebrating their uniqueness and pride, one individual carried out a hateful attack that was intended specifically for the trans community. November 20th is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which makes the unnecessary loss of life deeply distressing. The fact that the crime was perpetrated against transgender individuals and the LGBTQIA+ community by a transgender person makes the task of even trying to understand the reasoning behind the massacre and the aftermath insurmountable. Club Q, which had been open for 20 years at the time of the shooting, was a safe place for expression, dance, and socializing, making this shooting nothing short of an utter catastrophe. Today's case is dedicated to the lives and memories of the 22 injured survivors, as well as the 5 deceased victims, Derek Rump, Daniel Aston, Ashley Powell, Kelly Loving, and Raymond Vance.
Active Shooter the podcast is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the no notoriety pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge in not naming the shooter by their actual name.
We will refer to today's shooter as Ira. We will be using they, them pronouns throughout this episode. On November 19th, 2022, a woman posted to her Facebook account describing her concern that her son was missing. Her post read, quote, "My son is missing. We made plans to go to a movie at 10 and he ran to go run a quick errand. I have been dressed up for 2 hours and I am so concerned. He took my phone and my debit card. If he was trying to avoid me, not likely, he wouldn't have told me to get ready to have the best night ever." The woman was unaware that her son, Ira, was in fact not missing. The 22-year-old was on their way to Club Q, which is situated behind a subway, about 6 miles from downtown, at the 3430 block of North Academy Boulevard in Colorado Springs, El Paso County, Colorado. Club Q opened in 2002 and was co-owned by Matthew Hayes. The club was well known for its delicious drinks, dance parties, and drag shows, which were done by performers playing Beyoncé, Cardi B, Cher, and Madonna. The party at the club that Saturday night was particularly effervescent due to the celebrations for Transgender Awareness Week, and even though it was freezing cold outside, the temperature indoors was fevered. The party atmosphere was going strong when, at 11:56 p.m., Ira entered, carrying an AR-15 and a handgun. They were wearing a black t-shirt, blue jeans, a ballistics vest, and a black baseball hat. DJ T Beats, Tara Bush, was spinning records and everyone was in their own world, grooving to the music when suddenly gunfire broke out and the world changed forever. Ira wasted no time. They were firing their weapon the second they walked in the door. The ballistics vest carried extra ammunition, and it was clear that Ira planned to take out as many unsuspecting people as possible. They aimed nowhere. They just raised the firearm and shot everything and anything. Ultimately, killing 5 and injuring 17.
So I took a bullet in my arm, and I just watch as several people in the bar area just go down, right? I'm right next to my partner who gets shot in the leg, and then I just saw my sister on the ground.
There were another 5 people that were injured, though not by bullets. Most likely petrified partygoers were rushing out of the building and trampling over each other. DJ T Beats was shot, but did survive her injuries. 38-year-old Derek Wayne Rump was a partial owner and bartender at Club Q. He was born on January 3rd, 1984, and was an entertainer from day one, even performing at the club the night of the shooting. A lover of all things Britney Spears, Derek was vibrant, a full-of-life presence who genuinely made a difference in other people's lives, which meant the most to Derek. He welcomed every single person, no matter their age, race, sexual orientation, religion, or politics. If you were at the bar, you were embraced, and it's that very accepting nature that will make Derek truly missed. Initially, partygoers thought the sounds of gunfire were a part of the booming music. It was after the shooting continued, without pause, that consternation sunk in. People rapidly realized that they were under attack, and the first thought for most was probably to run. Hiding inside the open club, that all at once felt much too small, seemed an impossible feat. Except for those close enough to seek shelter behind the bar or in the dressing rooms. Other victims and survivors simply dropped to the ground, trying to stay as low as possible. Perhaps they were playing dead, as many do in the shootings we've covered. Muzzle flashes continuously lit up the space, constantly punctuating the fear hanging in the air, and bottles and glasses shattered around the bar, and they were likely responsible for at least some of the injuries sustained that night. Daniel Davis Aston was only 28 years old when he was murdered. Daniel was born on July 8, 1994 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he attended the Broken Arrow School, graduated in 2013, and went to the Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Daniel had been employed at the club for about 2 years before the shooting, and by all accounts, he was content working there. He loved being around friends and family. He was a true artist. Daniel was passionate about music, poetry, art, and acting. He was compassionate and was the first there to help a friend in need, and that type of friend is one we all need. And he was taken from this world far too soon. Although it likely sounded like, and felt like, much more, there were a total of 12 shots fired, and Ashley Marie Powell, a doting wife and mother, was unfortunately another victim killed in the shooting. Ashley was married to her high school sweetheart, and their daughter was never short of affection and attention from her mom. Ashley's daughter was her life, and you couldn't find a parent more proud of their child. In Ashley's case, it was warranted, as her daughter is a championship swimmer. An aunt to numerous nephews and nieces, Ashley was so adept with children that she even did charity work for the Kids Crossing, which is a nonprofit that helps foster children get placed into long-term homes. And she was a fervent organizer, raising funds, awareness, and anything else she could do for the organization. Her goodwill hardly ended there. Ashley volunteered at Christmas time, coordinating getting Christmas trees to needy families. Ashley still took it a step further by locating local businesses to sponsor families and foster children for the holidays. She enjoyed being outdoors, and she was always eager to get out to ride four-wheelers, fish, and hunt. Ashley touched many lives, and her beautiful soul will be missed by all that knew her. The first 911 call was placed at 11:56, which was mere seconds after the shooting commenced. The first responding officer was on scene by midnight, and they were taking Ira into custody 2 minutes later. Despite the immediate police response, terrified patrons and witnesses were too scared to retreat from their hiding places, and many victims were found in and outside of the club. One of those victims that police discovered was 40-year-old Kelly Loving. Kelly was born on November 16, 1982, and had just celebrated her 40th birthday only days before she was murdered. A barista at Dunkin' Donuts for years, Kelly eventually left that job so she could travel and afford herself the amazing ability to discover new places and lands. She was always quick to lend a hand or help someone out, and Kelly had a ton of friends and family who she could count on for support. Her untimely death will be felt by all who loved her. Outside of the club, pieces of clothing and other debris were scattered across the parking lot, along with medical intervention tools and blood. So much blood. Including that of 22-year-old Raymond Green Vance. The night of the shooting was Raymond's first time at the club, and he was visiting with his girlfriend, Cassie Fierro, and her family. A Chicago native, he moved to Colorado Springs shortly after he was born. Raymond was a 2018 graduate of Sand Creek High School, where he was incredibly popular and admired, and the charisma he exuded was felt well beyond his high school years. He was living with his sister and mother at the time of the shooting, but Raymond had been diligently saving up to get his own apartment, which he was well on his way to doing, especially since he'd been working for the Colorado Springs FedEx Distribution Center. During the rush to run, or hide, Raymond was shot, but his girlfriend of 5.5 years was able to run. However, she got a broken ankle after she slipped and fell. Raymond laughed and smiled often, and both his smile and laughter will be missed dearly.
I was on the dance floor, and I heard shots. I heard 4 to 5 shots ring out. I thought it was the music. There was either the music was so loud that we couldn't hear anybody scream for help, or we just didn't hear anybody scream for help. So I thought it was the music, so I kept on enjoying myself. And then I heard another set of shots ring out, and I turned to my left, and I saw the flash from the muzzle. And when I saw that, I ran to the dressing room where the drag queens change and get ready for their performances. And there was, including me, there were 2 other people in there. I made them lock the doors. We closed and locked the doors. We got down on the ground and we cut off all the lights. We heard everything. We heard a third round of shots. We heard the assailant be detained by, I assume, employees of Club Q. We heard the police come in. We heard yelling, shaking, crying, fearing for our lives. I'm thinking, like, at any second, this man could just bust through the door and kill us if he really wanted to. Bodies on the ground, blood, shattered glass, people dead. It was sad. It was scary. Our safe space is no longer our safe space, and we are a broken community, and we shouldn't have to come together after something like this.
The police response was swift and sizable. 39 patrol officers from 4 divisions of the Colorado Springs Police Department, 34 firefighters, and 11 ambulances responded to the scene. But it was U.S. Army veteran Richard M. Fierro who charged across the bar and brought Ira to the ground. When they were tackled, the rifle fell from Ira's hands and fumbled out of reach. In Ira's waistband was the handgun, or the backup weapon. Fierro managed to grab the backup weapon and shot at Ira until they could no longer attack. A struggle ensued, where a patron saw and intervened, grabbing the rifle from Ira, while a transgender woman used her high heels to stomp on Ira, holding them down until the police arrived. When police found Fierro with Ira, they brought both into custody, sitting Fierro in the back of the police cruiser until they could question him further, which they did, and immediately released him.
Grabbed him by the back of his little cheap-ass armor thing, and I pulled him down, pinned him against the side, and just started, I think he went for his pistol. I don't know, either way, I grabbed the pistol from him, and then I told the guy, move the AR, the kid in front of me, he was at his head. I said, move the AR, get the AR away from him. And the kid did it. And then I started wailing on this dude. And I'm on top of him. I'm a big dude, man, and this guy was bigger. And I just kept wailing on him. And I told the kid in front of me, kick him in his head, keep kicking him in his head. I'm yelling 911, somebody call 911.
By 12:30 a.m., everyone had been evacuated or removed from the building, while a perimeter was established. At 3:30 a.m., Ira's mother caused an outburst outside of the apartment she shared with Ira. The police report indicated that Ira's mom was making, quote, unreasonable noise next to multiple apartments, and how she was, quote, warned multiple times to stop yelling, or she would be arrested. The woman continued to scream, wailing about how her son died that night. They didn't. They were still very much alive, though injured. Ira was born on May 20th, 2000, and their life was very unstable from the start. They were born in California and then moved to Colorado. Then they moved to Texas and back to Colorado again. In August of 1999, Ira's mom married her first husband, and the couple welcomed Ivan into the world within their first year of marriage. They eventually split in July of 2001, and the divorce was final in September of 2001. Ira's mother retained full custody, and the divorce seems to have been fairly contentious, as there was an order signed with the divorce papers that forbade Ira's father from having contact with the family. Not long after the divorce, Ira and their mother moved to Texas, where they lived on and off with Ira's maternal grandparents. Ira's father is currently an MMA fighter, but was formerly a pornographic film actor. However, his past didn't mean that he was open-minded or accepting. When he first learned of the shooting, his first thought was to worry about his child being gay, as if that somehow made the situation worse. When the father gave an interview after the shooting, he made inflammatory statements such as, quote, "We don't do gay," and expressed relief that his child wasn't, in fact, gay. He seems to have struggled with addiction for a good part of his and Ira's life. It got so bad that eventually an intervention was done. It was even filmed for the TV show Intervention. He seems to have remained calm and sober since, and he's expressed the desire to set up a fighting match where all of the proceeds would be donated to the families of the shooting victims. On November 28, 2001, Ira's paternal grandmother filed for a restraining order against Ira's mom, her former daughter-in-law. The order was granted for 3 years, though the reasons for requesting the protection order remain unclear. The day after the order was filed, Ira's mother filed for her own protection order against her former mother-in-law. It, too, was granted for 3 years. When Ira was 7, their mom filed for child support. At the time, she was unemployed and pregnant by a new man and needed income. A child support order was issued for $300 monthly, but Ira's father was denied any type of visitation. In June of 2007, Ira's mom gave birth to another son, who was promptly placed into the custody of his father, though for reasons unknown. In April of 2010, Ira's grandparents moved from Murrieta, California, to Denver, Colorado, and at that time, Ira began living with them. They lived in Denver for some time before moving to San Antonio, Texas in the spring of 2012. The family wanted to be closer to their other daughter, Ira's aunt, who was living in Texas at the time. That same year, Ira created their first YouTube account, and in 2012, they posted a video that received 300 views and was uploaded with a quote, "Crude animation with Asian homosexual label." Ira was enrolled in the 5th grade at Tuscany Heights Elementary School in May of 2012. They attended classes for about a month before they were transferred to San Antonio's Northeast Independent School District. From the fall of 2012 through October 2015, Ira rarely attended class, boarding on truancy. They would be enrolled for a few months, then leave for a few months. However, the spokesperson for the school would later say that there had never been reports of bullying when Ira actually went to school. On the other hand, it does appear that Ira was the focus of a website where photos and derogatory statements and taunts were directed at them. And for any 15-year-old, that can be a lot to handle, though that in no way excuses their abhorrent behavior. On January 14th, 2012, when they were 12 years old, Ira's mother was arrested for suspected arson. The case dragged on for years, taking a toll on the already unstable little family. Their mom was ordered to undergo mandatory drug testing, as well as numerous psychological assessments. She was found guilty in August of 2013 of a lesser offense, specifically criminal mischief, and was sentenced to a term of probation for 5 years. However, records indicate that she did not legally or successfully complete probation. At about the same time she was being sentenced, Ira was beginning the 7th grade at Bush Middle School, before heading to high school at Johnson High. In October 2015, Ira withdrew from school, and according to their family, they began homeschooling. After they dropped out of former school, Ira shows no record of receiving any type of education. Ira, with the help of their grandparents, filed for a formal name change on April 28, 2016, and the change was granted on May 2, 2016. Ira's grandparents were listed on the name change request, but their mother was not. It's not clear if she was supportive of her child at this time or not. At the time, Ira suggested the reason for the change was because they wanted to distance themselves from their father and his criminal record. It seems an ironic idea considering that in September, they allegedly punched their grandfather in the face while living in San Antonio. Granddad suffered a concussion but told the ER doctor that he fell downstairs. On June 7, 2018, Ira's grandma filed for bankruptcy in California, though they were actually living in Texas. The bankruptcy shows as discharged in October of the same year. However, the grandparents managed to purchase a new home in El Paso County, Colorado, paying $330,260 for the house, according to real estate records. Their grandparents had a major hand in raising Ira, and they were protective, knowing they had a rough home life growing up, which must have made their move to Florida in the fall of 2021 devastating to Ira, who was not asked to move with them. The decision may have been because of an incident that occurred either June 16th or 17th. The precise date isn't clear. A relative of the family claimed to the Denver Gazette that Ira's grandpa called the relative, claiming to be hiding in a closet, afraid for her life. She was hiding from Ira. This wasn't reported after the shooting. No, this relative contacted the FBI and made the report, telling the feds that Ira was dangerous and had been threatening their grandfather. The FBI informed the relative that they would need to contact local authorities, specifically the Colorado Springs Police Department. Instead, a relative contacted the El Paso County Sheriff to make a report and request a welfare check on Grandpa, since Ira was living in the grandparents' basement. The Sheriff's Department took the call seriously enough to send a deputy out to check on things. When the police arrived at the home, they were informed by the grandparents that Ira was in the basement, sleeping, and that they had no concerns, and in fact would be moving to Florida shortly. Without Ira, after the welfare check, the deputy contacted the concerned relative back and stated that all was well, reporting what the grandparents had said. What was reported after the shooting was that the grandfather said he thought Ira heard the comments to the police about moving to Florida. This statement enraged Ira, not because they believed they weren't going with their grandparents, but because they did think they were going, and marijuana wasn't legal in Florida, and Ira didn't wish to give up getting high. On June 18, 2021, at 1:56 p.m., Ira's grandmother called 911 to report that Ira was, quote, going to be the next mass shooter, saying that Ira wanted to go out in a blaze. The police searched for Ira, locating them hiding out at their mom's house on Pilgrimage Drive. Though Ira was holding his mother as a prisoner in her own home, she refused to cooperate with the authorities. The bomb squad and negotiators were called after Ira made a bomb threat. Negotiators tried talking Ira into surrendering, which they eventually did as a SWAT team was establishing a perimeter around the house. Allegedly, Ira was swigging vodka like it was water and was incredibly intoxicated, perhaps not only by alcohol. 10 other homes surrounding the house were evacuated as a safety measure, and finally, after a 3-hour standoff, Ira's mother ran out of the house, shouting that her child let her go. Despite seeming to attempt to cover for Ira, she did report that her child was, quote, threatening to cause harm to her with a homemade bomb, multiple weapons, and ammunition. Ira was arrested and taken into custody. They were booked on 2 counts of felony menacing and 3 counts of first-degree kidnapping, and Judge Michael McHenry set bond at $1 million. On July 20th, 2021, Ira's grandparents sold their home for $464,900. Relatives say the house was sold to help pay Ira's bond and for a defense attorney. The case was never actually prosecuted, and though the exact reason why isn't known, it's most likely that the family refused to cooperate or testify against Ira. No bomb was ever found, though materials to create one were. Most concerning, though, is that Ira's mother reported that her child had multiple weapons inside the house, and not one single firearm was removed following this incident. The grandparents officially moved to Florida in November of 2021, and Ira and their mom moved into an apartment on North Nevada Avenue in Colorado Springs. The move was particularly difficult for Ira because they were so used to grandparents protecting and covering for them at all costs. The police were called to the house many times while Ira lived with them, and Grandma and Grandpa would never allow Ira to be arrested or even detained. According to one of Ira's uncles, the grandparents gave Ira $30,000, which they used to purchase one of their 2 3D printers, one of which arrived at the house after Ira was arrested in the bomb kidnapping incident. Ira contacted the Colorado Springs Gazette on August 31st, 2022, asking them to remove or retract the story about the bomb threat incident in 2021. Ira claimed that the story was preventing them from being hired for a job. While the reporters weren't willing to remove the story in full, they did remove Ira's name, which was only decided after confirming that the case had been sealed. It appears that Ira built the weapons used in the shooting. They were ghost guns, without serial numbers, which relatives believe were made using 3D printers, which seems likely as there were numerous gun parts located in the home after the shooting. Ira's father would later describe his child as having a lot of rage, claiming that Ira once choked their own mother during an outburst, a claim that seems quite likely, although it's equally clear that Ira was raised in an abusive, chaotic home most of their life. Ira was transferred from the hospital to the El Paso County Jail on November 22, 2022, and the following day they could be seen slumped over a chair with clear wounds to their neck and head. The judge asked Ira their name, a basic question, to which they struggled to respond. Initially, they were held on 10 arrest charges, without bond, including 5 counts of first-degree murder and 5 counts of committing a bias-motivated crime causing bodily injury. The charges have since been enhanced to include another 305 counts that include first-degree murder, bias crimes, and attempted murder. Many of those who tragically lost loved ones as a result of this hateful attack told the Associated Press that they'd received advance notice that Ira would plead guilty to all charges. After hearing from their injuries, Ira claimed to want to take responsibility. They would spend their remaining days locked up tight without any chance of freedom.
All right, we are following some breaking news this morning. The suspect in the Club Q shooting will plead guilty to more than 300 hate crimes and murder charges when they appear in court later this month.
So is accused of killing 5 people and hurting 17 others at the LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado Springs last November. Some of the survivors and the victim's family told the AP that prosecutors told them about the plea deal, which is required by state law. Also spoke to the AP from jail and said, quote, "I have to take responsibility for what happened." They will likely spend the rest of their life in prison. The next hearing is scheduled for June 26th.
There is a hearing set for June 26th, and the shooting survivors must now prepare themselves for the gut-wrenching impact statements, as well as the possible release of CCTV footage from the shooting. The survivors have been chosen to serve as grand marshals for the annual Pride Parade in Denver, and while the event will surely be emotional, it will likely be therapeutic for the community to come together and rise above the hate they face day in and day out. It seems that this shooting should have been prevented, or preventable. There were many opportunities for intervention, and indeed plenty of this shooter's relatives expressed concern. Perhaps if the shooter wasn't completely shielded or protected from facing consequences for their actions, the outcome of November 19th and 20th, 2022 may have been vastly different. We all have the unique ability to help prevent such a catastrophic event from happening, if we keep our eyes and ears open and never hesitate to report when something or someone just doesn't seem right. With the delicate balance of mental health reform, education, active shooter training, and common sense gun laws, we may one day realize the dream that there will be no more active shootings. We pray that love will prevail over hate. In the meantime, we urge our listeners to stay aware of your surroundings and keep in touch with your loved ones. If you see something, say something. You never know how many lives you'll be saving. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Active Shooter, the podcast. Remember, if you see something, say something. There's no telling how many lives you may be saving. A big thank you to Darren Curtis, who composed some of the songs on our show. You can find him online at www.darrencurtismusic.com. Make sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Active Shooter, the podcast, and on Twitter at Podcast Active. Thank you, and be safe.